Hello and welcome to the show. Now, the Forza 6 relay races we have done in the past have been very, very good fun and quite an interesting thing to do. It's been a long time since we've done one, and I just fancied having another go. The rules that we were going to be using this time was a set amount of PI spread over 4 cars. Now, we have done this before. However, it was very much you wanted a Formula 1 car on your team, and that was the quickest way to do things. This time, slight change to the rules. 2,500 PI, slightly more PI to spread over the 4 cars than we had last time. However, you were not allowed to go higher than R-Class. You could still have, of course, an R-Class car, and that would be very, very quick, but you couldn't have the monstrously overpowered X-Class cars. Was curious to see how this would pan out, and thankfully all 4 teams went down different routes. As we got ready for our first race at the Watkins Glen circuit, we all started with different classes of cars as well. Pink team launching off with a B-Class Renault 5, green team going with a D-Class Aztek. They actually got off the line pretty well. Brown team sending out a C-Class car, while us at Orange team were sending out an E-Class vehicle. The Alpine, having not had the greatest of starts, would quickly find its way past the Aztek, with everybody running different classes of cars and kind of sorting themselves out fairly early on. Nobody was massively compromised in this first stint. We talked about it before. Certainly if you have to send out 2 cars of the same PI, they end up battling one another, can slow each other down a fair amount and ultimately not make the most of that particular vehicle. Things wouldn't quite go according to plan for Brown team, though, with a controller disconnect for the poor Renault as it's coming down the back section. The Alpine would bounce its way across the gravel trap. He does manage to get it working just before the car ends up in the wall, spun around, and with a little bit of lag, find his way back onto the circuit. That is not what you need. As you can see, the Aztek is long gone up the road. Our E-Class Escort was right there behind him as we come around the final couple of corners. Yeah, not an ideal start. Not an ideal start. Some technical issues for that poor car. Pink team, having sent out the highest PI car of the lot, would then hand over to a C-Class car, as the rest of us would be sitting and waiting. You can see the size of the gap, but that's always likely to happen. It's a very, very fast B-Class Renault as well, I should point out. Stupidly quick Renault 5. Green would hand over to their fastest car of the lot, S1 Class BMW M1 Pro car. Of course, while they are a fair way down on that pink team, as Brown would hand over to the next car as well in the background, they've now got a very, very quick car to try and do the chasing down. Their plan, chase down the pink team, get the lead, and hopefully be able to extend it through their next vehicle. However, they were left with a little bit too much work to do. As we came around the end of the lap here, BMW was still leading the way, and that is the downside. The Aztek just couldn't stay close enough. It couldn't stay close enough to the leading pink car. Both vehicles. See how much they were pushing it, a bit of a bounce across the curb at that final corner. The BMW is now catching very, very quickly as they run down towards the finish line. The BMW just beat the pink car across the line. Green team then managed to have their Sierra in the wrong gear. Well done, guys. Well, that we've all done it at some point. It's just not a good place in all of this. So, yeah, the BMW having worked so hard to try and catch up. A fair bit of that hard work now undone. Again, Green Team do have a car advantage at this point. It's a B-Class vehicle here trying to chase down a D-Class car, I believe. But that is, yeah, not the kind of gap that they were needing. Now, us at Orange team were going for a high-risk strategy in this one, while Brown team were handing over to an A-Class car, the Honda NSX. Again, another very, very quick car, but with a lot of work to do. Certainly not helped by the Alpine's adventure across the gravel trap. There was, yeah, a lot of ground to make up. The Orange team strategy was to, run 2 R-Class cars. My Country Squire, my D-Class Country Squire, would come across the line. We now had a Zonda and a Browner Hawk to finish us off. The plan was, while we knew we were going to be a long, long way behind with our slower cars, we had very, very quick vehicles. This had been the way that things had worked. The previous kind of PI Limited 1 Formula 1 cars were by far and away the best option. So we put all our eggs in one basket, essentially, and hoped that with 2 very, very high-performance cars, we would be able to make up the ground that the E-Class Escort and my D-Class Country Squire, Country Boat could make up the ground. Green would take the lead heading on to the final stint that hand over. In the lead, they would have their A-Class Ferrari to finish off the round. However, they were up against a Formula 1 car. Not the crazy X-Class ones, but still a very, very quick vehicle. Green needed a bigger lead. Green needed a much, much bigger lead for this to work. The Ferrari was clinging on for about a quarter of the lap, maybe, as the pig teams at Formula 1 would come sailing past. The Ferrari was way too brave under brakes. At the end of the day, didn't really have much. You're never going to be able to hold off against a Formula 1 car, and yeah, too much bravery was going to cost him. While that handover was happening, our Zonda wasn't fast enough, hadn't had enough time to make up anywhere near enough ground to be challenging Pink Team as they handed over to an R-Class car to finish off. However, he had managed to close to the back of the Brown Team's vehicle. This would work in our favour as they leave the final corner. The Zonda would hand over to the Browner Hawk, another R-Class car. A little bit slow reaction from the Hawk as that would set off, but in the end, it was going to be an R-Class race car against an S-Class Corvette. Corvette is quick, do not get me wrong. These cars are quick, but yeah, again, we'd managed to make up some of the time, but we were a long way down. We were a long way down on the Pink Team. The time lost in the opening stages with our E-Class, our D-Class cars, we weren't going to be quite able to really make that back up, and it would be Pink Team that would go on to take a relatively comfortable victory around here as well when they handed over almost in the lead to their R-Class car to finish off. Yeah, nothing that certainly nothing that us as an orange team or brown could do about that, as it would cross the line for, as I said, a very, very comfortable victory, with green team having bounced their car into the wall and fallen back to the back of the train. Wasn't too much for the Corvette to overcome that Ferrari. We would take second. Our high-risk strategy paid off, admittedly helped by mistakes from the other teams, with Browns exploring and Green reverse and outbraking. That would be enough for us to get up into second, but it hadn't quite worked as I had hoped. The high-risk strategy, our slow cars were just too slow. We were just too far back to do a huge amount about catching the cars further up. But another track, we were sticking with our solid strategy of sending out the slow cars first. Green team were trying something a little bit different, sending out their A-Class Ferrari here. Brown team had changed one of their C-Class cars without me realising, so slightly cheaty buggers going on over there, but there we go. The Renault 5 got off to a brilliant start as the Ferrari was now looking for a way past. We're going to the Yas Marina. Go optioned for the corkscrew circuit this time around, one that tends not to get particularly used that often. An interesting layout, quite nasty through, well, funnily enough, the corkscrew section here. I quite like it though. It's something a little bit different. The Ferrari was, well, being held up. I talked about this briefly with the first race. When you send out cars of different classes, you really can't afford to be stuck behind a car, especially when that car is of a lower class. The Ferrari didn't really have anywhere to go for the first kind of quarter of the lap, and that's going to have cost him ultimately some time. While you see with our orange team, our E-Class car, he's going to be slower than just about everything. It can run around, but it can run around at its own maximum pace, whereas the Ferrari had to be careful, had to be slower behind the Renault for a little while in that opening section. Green team were trying to, or hoping to, build an early lead, managed to stay out in front, and they would hand over in first place, but you can see how close the B-Class Renault had stayed to them. The Renault 5 monstrously quick around just about anywhere. We would once more have Sierra taking on the Cortina in this second stint as, well, these two would both have issues with turn one. I think almost everybody in this second stint would go for an explore at first corner, just not quite realising levels of grip in their vehicles. Will be sat on the grid for quite a while. Brown team, again, sticking with sending out their two C-Class cars. Our Escort did a good job, bearing in mind it is by far and away the slowest car here, to hand over to me in not too terrible a position it wasn't so far down on the C-Class cars. And I would set off in the country boat. This, one of my better D-Class cars, even I, though, get into trouble with not quite knowing how much speed you can take through there. Also choosing not to fight the curbs, because the curbs can be really, really vicious. But, we were once again down towards the back as expected. Again, Pink Team had managed to stay close. Pink Team had managed to stay close to that higher PI car of Greens, and that was likely to be, problematic. The Green Team just simply weren't being able to make enough of their vehicles. Again, to get in trouble, everyone had issues. Everyone having issues at turn 1 as the BMW goes racing off after the Aztek. Now, there is always, of course, a danger with racing, two cars with vastly different speeds, especially the Aztek, that was struggling its way down through the corkscrew. They managed to come together. Very, very lucky to get away with all of that. The Aztek was on a slightly wonky line, and, bouncing off the side of the BMW. Your cars go round, you get spun. That's where things are not going to be in... a good place for you. Any little mistake while running wide on your own out of a corner, okay, it'll cost you a little bit of time, but a big spin, crashes, can change the course of these events. We've seen that in the past. Brown was sending off their A-Class next, the Honda NSX. They had stayed relatively close. Without the controller turning off, they were doing a closer or a better job of staying close. The thing is, the NSX needed to be quite well clear, in fact, of the BMW if they were going to have a chance when it came to that final changeover. Because once again, it was their S-Class car going up against an R-Class vehicle. For us, things weren't quite going according to plan so much. Once more, if we were wanting to try and fight for the lead, we really needed to be a lot closer. And the R-Class cars just simply couldn't make up the time. They just weren't able to make up the time that both me and the Escort lost in the early stages. The Zonda, was doing a good job, was closing up to the back of the Green Team's Aztek. You could see that up ahead, but it wasn't going to be enough. It wasn't going to be enough to try and fight for the lead. Likewise, the NSX had closed to the back of the BMW, but wasn't going to be able to pass it. Our Zonda would get its way past just on the line. Green Teams that would hand over to the Brown Hawk with a small bit of a gap to that S-Class BMW. Again, Green were going to struggle on this final stint, being down on, PI and a fair bit of time to a similarly comparable car. The real question in this was, could the Hawk find a way to catch up to the Corvette? That was the last of the big battles, once more, too far down on the Pink Team's Formula 1 car. There you can see that Corvette in the distance, and you really couldn't afford to make mistakes around here. At the front of the race, and again, it was a very, very well-run affair by the Pink Team. Their lower PI cars had done a very, very good job of racing with the higher matched cars. The Corvette was holding on to second place, losing plenty of time to Pink Team's F1 car. You can kind of see it going through the hotel complex here. However, it was being caught. It was being mercilessly caught by the Orange Hawk as these two now come underneath the hotel. There was only a couple more corners to go for the Corvette. All it needed to do was hold on through here, but it doesn't have the grip. Doesn't have the grip of the open-wheeled car, doesn't have the straight-line speed as they round the final turn. The Corvette does everything he can to try and defend, but it's not got an answer to that acceleration as we would get them just on the line. Very, very close race. Interesting between our two strategies end up so incredibly close between the vehicles. But yeah, Pink absolutely thrashed us. Green weren't actually too far behind in all of that either. Our final race, and we would head to Sebring with, some rain. Some nasty, nasty rain to try and deal with. Green were sticking with their strategy, actually, of trying to get out into the lead early on and run at the front as much as they could, sending out their fastest car to build them up a nice little bit of a margin. Brown Team got themselves in a little bit of trouble on the outside puddle. We actually moved the start line. We moved our cars further back from the games where the game would normally start the race, because there is a horrible puddle on the outside, and with us starting 4 cars wide, we wanted a little bit more space. Still, Brown Team managed to get themselves in trouble across that. while green, yeah, will try and make the most of running at the front. Again, you can make this strategy work. If you can run at the front, you're going to be running in clean air. You know, you send out your fast cars. You are going to be running in clean air, but it does mean in the later stage of the race, you're going to have slow cars. Very difficult to defend with slow cars, especially against some of the machinery in this field. The Puddle of Doom, well, that was in attendance. It's been a while since we've seen a good Puddle of Dooming, and the Mazda was in for a little bit of trouble as running too wide through the Puddle of Doom, couldn't get it all gathered back up. There's another puddle on the outside in the braking zone there that got the car caught on. That's skidding its way across the braking zone. Could have been worse, admittedly, for the RX-7, but once more, these are not sort of issues that you really want to be having, especially with your opening car. Green team, as expected, would be handing over in the lead, but they're sending out their slowest car next. The Aztek slithers its way off the start line. Pink would almost forget where the cars were lined up with the Renault 5. It's very hard to see in all the murk in the rain, and you know, you couldn't really see the car approaching in the replay, so you can understand how the driver might not be able to see the line of cars parked up there. Renault did an incredible job of just about getting out of the way of that to set off the BMW. Yeah, in all the times we've done this, we've never had a car kind of racing, a transitioning car, if you like, smack into the back of the parked vehicles. We've got close, though. We've got very close. That might be the closest yet. Brown team recovered, despite their little bit of an adventure to send off their second of the C-Class cars. Even with some exploring from the Mazda, you see how far back Escort was, and we were going to be even further back again, while Brown had two C-Class cars. We were sending off my D-Class country boat. Now, admittedly, you might hope that a boat would be good in this sort of weather, certainly with the amount of standing water around the circuit. But, yeah, we were fearful of this because our strategy solely relied on high-powered cars making up time, and in conditions like this, that's asking for trouble. Likewise, the Puddle of Doom was going to try and catch out another team. This time, Pink's BMW Z8, not quite as bad as the Mazda, does get it back on track, but he too has trouble getting it stopped into the next corner, not quite as far off across the grass, but it is hunt for the Aztek, perhaps not quite what you want to be doing. But yeah, these kind of all exploring. These cars you may well not have raced, certainly not, never raced these cars in the rain, might not have ever raced them at Sebring, and so when you're kind of learning as you go in quite a high pressure environment almost. So yeah, mistakes were always likely to happen. The D-Class Aztek was going to hand over in the lead. Unfortunately, a small mistake out of the final corner was certainly not going to help Green Team's cause, bouncing off the tyre bundle. The BMW catching very, very quickly towards the end. Once again, it would be Cortina. I think these two raced each other every single time on the stints as the Cortina and Sierra would set off underway. Now, it should be fairly straightforward for the Sierra, being the higher class car, being the B-class car in all of this, and indeed he would get the position heading in towards the first corner, and he needed to, again, extend that gap as much as possible. They only had an A-class car to finish off the round. They needed to get as far away as they possibly could. While further back, Brown would be handing over to their quicker cars, sending off the NSX. You'll see the size of the gap that they had over Orange. And this is why our strategy was always a high risk and one that struggled around these at such a huge amount of time for our R-Class cars to make up as the Country Squire comes through. This time, I always decided to mix things up slightly, sending out the Hawk next. It's, yeah, a lot of time. As fast as these cars are, it's a lot of time that they have to try and make up. And this is now in horrible, horrible conditions, in vehicles that are perhaps not the easiest of, well, I say perhaps, that are not the easiest of cars to try and drive. I think it was still worth the risk, going for something quite different. It could have paid off really, really well, but the amount of time that we needed to make up, it's actually quite difficult as well, racing cars like this, with how much you push the vehicle, because you don't really have any reference points. Unlike in a normal race where you're racing perhaps similarly matched cars, yeah, you don't really have that much in the way of reference points, so you kind of just drive the cars as hard as you can, and overdriving, very, very easy to do especially in conditions like these, as the Sierra would find out, trying to get stopped into the hairpin and not quite getting it done. I think there's a puddle on the outside he caught and just couldn't slow the car down in time. Once you started going off there at the hairpin, again, especially in the rain, when the grass is nothing in terms of gripping the grass, you are better off taking the sort of alternate extended hairpin route. But that's costly in terms of time, as it is a big slide across the puddle of doom. It's more almost trouble. So many cars got away without a huge accident coming into that braking zone. It's quite surprising. We saw the Cortina clambering all across the curb to try and avoid the puddle of doom. Anything you can do to try and survive that corner. Now, the Sierra is the quicker of the two cars, would catch up, tries to go around the outside as the Cortina gets caught on the puddle and understeers wide. The two get together again. It's a huge let-off between pink and green team. Had the Cortina gone round into the wall, that would probably be race over for pink team. Again, similar story for the green team's Sierra. Now, the fight had cost them in terms of time. The battling between the pair of them had cost them. The Sierra got ahead before carrying too much speed into the final corner, smacking into the tyre bundle and ending any chance they had of competing in this. The brown team's NSX had caught, but once more it was going to be a similar story, as they would hand over pretty much the same time, and it was, well, Formula 1 versus Corvette. And as good as the Corvette is, yeah, the S-Class Corvette against the classic Formula 1 car, it was going to struggle. However, they did have a fairly big margin over, well, Orange Team. That was kind of, once again, the main battle here. Unless, of course, a mistake was made by the Pink Team's Formula 1 car, which, let's face it, in these conditions, mistakes are always easy to make. That was always likely to be, yeah, the main battle. Green would hand over, knowing that they were in an awful lot of trouble, as the Hawk would send our final car off and underway. Things would get worse for poor Green Team. The Ferrari caught the puddle heading down towards the first corner, managing to spin the car before even making it there. Yeah, it was not going well. After an okay, half-decent promising start, things went downhill quite quickly for poor Green Team. It was all down to our Zonda. Could it catch up to second place? Once more, we were way too far down. I think our car's just too difficult to drive in the rain, and our E&D class put us too far back to really challenge for the lead. But could we go and chase down the Corvette? We had the class advantage. The Puddle of Doom then tried to murder our Zonda, across there. He just about got away with it. Ran a little bit deep into the next corner. Perhaps got away with it to the best of many. So I think all teams had some adventure at that particular corner. I did okay with the country boat, but yeah, it was a nasty corner at the front, and despite going quite wide into the final corner with the Formula 1 car, yeah, Pink Team had the measure of this one once more. In that in their cars, it would be another fairly comfortable victory in all of this. Second place was not quite as closely contested, though, this time around. Try as our Zonda might, it was not able to reel in that Corvette. I think our R-Class cars were just a little bit too much of a handful to really get around here, to make the most of their performance advantage over the Corvette. They were just not liking the road. You saw the Hawk twitching around. So Brown Team would take a second place. We would have to settle for third, and it was, yeah, a little bit of a sizable gap, actually, between the Corvette. You can just about see the Zonda in the background, the headlights, as it came across the line. Yeah, the rain, while it didn't make a huge difference to the overall victors, our strategy slightly fell apart a little bit in those conditions. So, as far as conclusions go, as far as strategies go, well, Pink Team got it right, with a couple of C-Class cars, a B-Class car, and an R-Class vehicle. That was very much the strategy to beat, and, well, we tried, Orange Team, we tried a high-risk plan, and it failed. We were just too far back. We were asking too much. Well, yeah, we had two R-Class vehicles. We were asking so much of them to try and simply get back into the race almost. They were so far down that they could never really quite get into it. And likewise with both Green and Brown Team, their more middle-of-the-road strategy. While, yeah, they didn't have any really, really slow cars, they were, again, never far enough ahead to be able to fend off from Pink Team's Formula 1 car. They could never get themselves far enough ahead that they'd have anything to fight with towards the end. I think it certainly helped. Pink Team had some very, very quick cars. Their Renault 5 is a B-class car. I think it's a monster, though, around the circuit, which meant, you know, the 600 PI used for that is perhaps more efficient than even some of the A-class cars. It's certainly not a full 100 PI down in terms of pace compared to perhaps some of the team's A-class cars. And yeah, that's where all the little fine details come in. Yeah, mistakes will play a part in this. Controllers turning off, making mistakes in the rain, certainly not going to help various teams. And having cars very difficult to drive, perhaps like our R-Class cars, certainly when it came to the wet weather at Sebring, won't have necessarily helped either. But yeah, interesting tactical battle. You definitely wanted to have a race car on your team. You wanted to have an R-Class car on your team, but going a little bit too ambitious left the R-Class cars that too much work to do, really. And then still can't complain with 2 second places for Orange Team. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.